I want to thank everybody for tuning in. My name is Ken Moffatt. I'm one of the school committee members for Shawsheen. And with me is Stacey Huberty, the other Shawsheen school committee member, and Tony McIntosh, the superintendent director. We're here to do an update on the MSBA process that Shawsheen has actually been recently invited into the pipeline. And so I want to thank Tony and Stacey for joining me. So we're just going to give a quick update and for the town of Burlington to just to provide more details, because this is coming up pretty soon, and we want to get some details and information out there. So we're just going to have Tony answer some questions and provide some more details for the town. So I guess, Tony, the first step of the MSBA process was the statement of interest that's been submitted into the funding pipeline. Can you provide more details on what was submitted that qualified Shawsheen as a viable candidate for a new school?
Yep. So one of the big focuses of the statement of interest that we provided was an update on our mechanical system ages and issues. If you look at our building, you walk the halls, it's well maintained, it's bright, it's welcoming. It's what's above the ceiling and below the floor are the things that we're really dealing with. Incoming power, HVAC, heating, cooling, ventilation. The other pieces that we focused on in our statement of interest were the size of the cafeteria and our auditorium in relationship to our student population. Our current auditorium only seats about 120 students. And we end up running 5 lunches in the cafeteria to serve all of the students enrolled at the school. So those are both conditions that we're trying to deal with and work around on a day-to-day basis. The other piece that I think was pivotal in us getting accepted was we did a real in-depth look at the square footage for all our technical programs. When the school was built in 1970, there was some different expectations versus what the state guidelines are for today. So I think when you put all of those things together, that's kind of what pushed us over the finish line.
I think recently we had talked about, isn't it I think only one of the shops actually is qualified per, was one of the big things that were in statement of interest.
Yeah, it might have been 2 of them, I think, that met the current guidelines.
So it kind of limits your ability to kind of meet those expectations and also to expand
programming.
Programs too. I mean, the one thing we had, probably before your time was the medical addition that was put on, which has helped, but I think long term we're going to need definitely something to look at. So, so this is my 5th year, and I know Shawsheen is, I'm going into my 6th year next year, but I know Shawsheen has applied for MSBA funding for the last 4 years. What, in your opinion, I know you're going into the 3rd year of your first term, what do you think's changed from the previous submissions to now that, I mean, just for everyone to understand, we're not actually at the funding stage, but we're in
we're in the preliminary.
Yeah, so I guess you just thoughts what you have thought in your 3 years now.
So every statement of interest we've submitted, we've refined. And that involves all the members of the leadership team, our facilities director. So we kind of have gone through that thing multiple times and tried to update it. Our facilities capital planning committees looked at it, given input as well. One thing I will just kind of make note of that, in 2023, there were no vocational schools that were invited into the process. And if you go back to 2022, there was only 1 vocational school. So I think some of this is some pent-up demand. And I think, part of it was being in the right place at the right time. The other thing to keep in mind is most of the regional vocational schools in the state were all built within a 15-year period between 1965 and 1970, late 70s. So what's happening is, they're all kind of coming of age, if you will, at the same time. So I think that is also something that's helped us with our application.
Yeah, I mean, if you look around, I mean, Minutemen, been redone. I think it's been really nice
Whittier
schools.
Whittier has been in different phases of the pipeline. Greater Lawrence has had 2 or 3 major renovations and expansion. So there's a track record of similar things with other schools. Northeast is under construction as well.
I mean, Shawsheen's perspective, just historian is they've had the windows, boiler, they've done the
roof.
Yeah, so that's the.
Accelerated repair,
and then the addition, which I think went through the one that went through.
Yeah, the medical wing I think was also an MSBA project, but again, it was kind of a smaller scale or a smaller scope.
But I think to your point, I think we've kind of the school's been really well maintained and fantastic job over the years. Like, but I think it's eventually reached a point where it lived its life. So. Yeah, just talking about the 270-day window, just to get into that, just so people are aware that basically, like, that there is a difference between, like you said, we're not actually in the pipeline. We're kind of, we're in that window. So now that we've been accepted and moved into the 270-day window, can you provide more details on this and what the school district needs, so just so people are aware what are next steps?
So just so everybody understands, there's multiple check-ins, if you will, with MSBA throughout this process. In each module, you actually go back before the MSBA board and they vote to accept what you submitted and potentially move you to the next step. But as far as the 270-day window goes, we need to establish a building committee. And again, what the recommendation that I've made is that we try to reach out to our sending communities and our community partners and make sure that we're inclusive as we start this process. We have to do an educational self-study or an educational profile, which looks at which programs do we currently offer, what do we think we might want to offer in a new building. Are we going to expand current programs? Are we going to reduce current programs? Are we going to add new programs? So there's a lot of moving pieces with that as well. We have to do an enrollment projection. That's one of the things that's required from MSBA, which will actually inform what our final building number is, what the capacity for students will be. We also have to get local authorization for the feasibility study, which would be the next phase that we would go into. So our 270-day window opens up, I want to say it's August 8th, and goes through April of 2026. So we're going to be busy over the summer and into next fall, making sure that we have all of this stuff done and ready to move forward to MSBA.
Oh, okay. So you actually have to do so there's multiple. So you actually have in that 270-day window, you have to go through multiple back. Do you have an idea how many that's going to be? Could be 3 or 4. Like you said, you said the educational study you have to submit. Do you have to do that as a separate approval?
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's I want to say there's approximately 8 or 10 items, and each one has a different submission date.
Got it.
So it's very, very clearly laid out from when we start to when we finish as to what the due dates are for each one of those pieces.
Okay, but you don't have to go before the board every time.
No.
Okay, just
I'm sorry.
they review. Okay,
just at the end of the module when we go before the board. Yep.
Okay. Well, after you do the 270-day window, I assume is that you can be less, or is it basically?
We can do it sooner if we have all the stuff done and submitted.
Okay.
Yep.
And then what would be if that is shortened or it is the 270? What's the next steps after that to do?
So the next piece after that would be the feasibility study.
Okay.
That's the next module in the pipeline.
Okay. Yeah, I think Burlington, we did Fox Hill, was one school that did a feasibility study, so I think that'd be a good thing that would kind of help. But that's actually with the people are aware. I think with town meeting, we did the stabilization fund last year that got approved, which I think will be a really good to help with that. Can you just touch briefly on how that's going to help with the feasibility study for this process? Yeah,
so when we had first started to discuss this last year, we kind of were coming at it from 2 prongs. One, if we didn't get accepted, if our statement of interest wasn't accepted, looking at, is there a way that we can start to fund some more of these capital projects long term ourselves without having to go back out to the sending communities and continue to ask for money. The other conversation was if we did get into the pipeline, depending on how that timing worked out, to have the potential to pay for a large chunk of, if not the whole feasibility study, was something that we thought would be really beneficial for the school. Again, as kind of that goodwill gesture to start the process and, not have to go out and ask for the money to do the feasibility study. And then be able to focus on, funding the project down the road if that was our goal.
Yeah, I also heard that somebody was telling me about you can actually get some as part of the process, which I don't know if that's actually, you get some of the money back as part of the feasibility.
Yeah, there is a reimbursement percentage, and again, it's all based on, there's all kinds of it's very formulaic, based on the wealth index and the ability of the communities to pay. But yeah, we could potentially get some of that as a refund.
Do you have an idea, just other schools?
They've been all over the place. Northeast, I think, got back 80% of theirs.
Wow.
Those schools I've heard 35%.
Wow.
So it really depends on the demographics that you serve. Yep.
But that's actually pretty good, like you said. Even with that, you're doing an outlay, and then potentially you could get some back, but not all of it. Okay, that's good.
So I think some people in Burlington would be interested in knowing if the process of building a vocational school is similar to building a traditional high school. Of course, here in Burlington, we're looking at building a different not a non-vocational high school. But of course, the difference, I guess, for us versus Burlington High with that, we're using the MSBA. But in general, do you feel like there's a difference between that?
So I mean, the thing that I would focus on is more of a regional versus a local school. I mean, vocational schools are regional schools. Shawsheen happens to serve 5 communities. Some regional schools are 2 or 3 towns. Some of them are as many as 18 or 19 different communities. So the process for a regional school is different than your local educational authority. The only thing that I will say from a vocational school standpoint, the projects are a little bit different and they're typically more expensive because not only are you building the traditional classroom spaces and the cafeteria and the gymnasium, you also have to have spaces for each one of those technical programs. We currently offer 20, and again, depending upon what that educational profile, questionnaire, survey, whatever you want to call it, shows, that number could stay the same. It could decrease. It could increase, depending upon what's determined as the need for a new building moving forward.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting. If Shawsheen was to get approved, we did just touch on this a little bit, but the process moving forward after the feasibility part,
Yep.
If you want to.
Yep. So again, there's different modules, and MSBA breaks all these things down into modules. So again, we're in the 270-day eligibility period. The next one would be the feasibility study. The next part would be form the team, which essentially we'd have to hire an owner's project manager, design firm, those other things. Then we'd move into the feasibility study. Those groups would work with our building committee to try to get some ideas about what the building should look like, how we want to utilize it, where it's going to be situated potentially on the property. Then that would move, again, to schematic design, which again is kind of broad scopes. The building's going to have 3 floors, it's going to have 2 floors, it's going to be this, it's going to be that. And then coming out of schematic design, that informs the funding process. And that is the time that we would go out to the sending communities, and we need a vote to bond the project. And then coming out of that, they do what they call detailed design, which is, you get into the nitty gritty of the mechanical systems and the structure and the materials that are going to be in the hallways and the classrooms. And then finally, last but not least, is construction. And then that's when all the fun starts.
So after all of those steps are done and gone through and the building starts, how long do you think it would take?
So everything that I've read says it's 6 to 7 years from the start of the 270-day eligibility period. So our eligibility period starts August of 2025. So again, you figure somewhere between 6 and 7 years. Now again, there's projects that have come to fruition faster than that. And again, I know, in my mind, if we're in this process, we're going to want to get this done as quickly as we can. We're going to want to move along. You are limited because the MSBA only has so much money that they allocate each year. So we can be Johnny on the spot and get stuff done, but that doesn't mean that our project's going to move forward any quicker.
Makes sense. So there does seem to be a recent shift to include more vocational schools, as we were just saying, many more this year in the MSBA pipeline. Do you believe that this will help Shawsheen's chance of receiving some funding from them?
I do. There's been a lot of conversation, at the legislative level and and in government about, and there's some pending legislation for this session around additional funding for schools, funding to expand schools, additional reimbursement rates, based on the square footage because they are a little bit more expensive to build than a traditional high school. So I think this is a good time for this type of project to come forward. The other thing that's very front and center at this point is student interest. And not to digress from the MSBA conversation, but this is actually the first year that Burlington has a wait list for applications. So, in most of our sending communities, we're getting more applications than we have seats available for students. So, all of those things I think weigh in our favor to have this move forward.
Which, saying that, we have so many students interested, which I think is wonderful. What do you think the town of Burlington can do to help Shawsheen in this process? So
the best and most helpful thing I can put out there is be supportive, but also be informed. I was kind of toying with the phrase once in a lifetime. It's actually more than a lifetime. I mean, this is a once in a 50 or once in a 60-year project that we're looking at doing. Again, the original building was built in 1970. If we can have another project, something, whether it's a renovation, expansion, it's a new building, whatever it is, that sets the school up for another 50 years, I think that's a good return on investment if you look at it that way. As this process moves forward, I know not just the Burlington representatives, but the other members of the committee will also, be communicating stuff out and sharing information. The best thing I can say is, ask questions, stay informed, keep up to date with what's going on, and make an informed decision about, is this the right thing for Burlington and the students that attend Shawsheen Tech? And if the answer to that's yes, it'd be great, to have that support.
I think we're really seeing that with the number of applicants that we've had. So thank you, Tony, for all that you do.
I'm hoping that the trend continues. This is a good sign, and I think that's something to look at the future. Like you said, with that, you need that school in order to support that growth. You're gonna need. So I said couple follow-up questions just on the, as we looked at some projects, they're not always, but MSBA, not just VOC. Sometimes you run into some challenges, not challenges, but I think the pool's a good example. That's a good resource for swim teams and swim lessons. Can you just comment how that would be impacted by the MSBA project? And is there anything else on the site that could potentially be impacted due to that?
Yeah, so there's certain things that MSBA won't reimburse for. And again, they'll disqualify certain things. One of the big ones, one of the glaring ones for Shawsheen Tech is the pool.
Cool, yeah.
And I know most of our sending communities use it in some capacity, whether it's swimming lessons for younger students or it's a high school swim team, middle school swim teams. That is something that is not covered by MSBA. So again, I think this is when the time comes, the conversation needs to be, this is what a building renovation, expansion, rebuild looks like. This is the price with the pool. This is the price without the pool. And I think that's going to have to be something that we visit as we get to that point in the conversation.
If that was the case, would you not that we can't see in the future, but just of other stuff in the state. I mean, we're not the first school district that's had this challenge. Would that be something you would do concurrently, or would you probably wait for an MSBA and then maybe do that as a separate bonding project? Just curious.
Well, MSBA won't cover.
No, I mean, you could do them, you do that as one project and then do the other.
Well, I think you have to determine what the overall direction of the MSBA recommendation is. So you'll come out of schematic design with, most of the time it's a dozen or 15 different options that they come up with. And then depending upon what the building committee decides is, the preferred option, then I think you have to have that conversation at that time about what makes sense moving forward.
Yeah, one other thing I think, as we see here in Burlington too, a lot of conservation. Do you see I know there's a good, you're in the Shawsheen River, there's conservation. Do you think that's going to potentially be a challenge as far as where you place the school? Or
I do. I think it'll be a challenge on where we can sit that on that lot. I still think we can do it.
Yep.
And again, I'm not a surveyor, I'm not a civil engineer, but just doing some broad scopes and looking at, some aerial views of the property, I think we'll be able to make it fit. One of the other things that I actually get asked by by a different community is, have we looked at, green building innovations and stuff like that? And again, it's really early in the process, but every design that I've seen, not just vocational schools, but high schools and middle schools and elementary schools now, people are including, ground source heat pumps, solar panels. There's a big push and a big trend towards making the buildings more energy efficient when they're built. So I'm sure that'll be part of the conversation.
Yeah, I mean, you can only do so much, but I know when I went to the school committee conference this year, there was a big session by National Grid and EverSource and the MSBA, some other organizations talking about energy efficiency, but it's you can only do so much of that on a building that's
65 years old.
So, no, the last question I had was just Burlington itself's going through with the high school here. Just one question on you were talking about the community involvement on the high school building committee. Can you just kind of elaborate how that would kind of be different? I mean, I know because you have multiple towns and you only have so much. How would that kind of be structured? What type of involvement would you be looking for? I
mean, ideally, I think we'd be looking for at least one representative from each one of our communities. As I've kind of researched this, a lot of the vocational schools, it appears they've kind of almost insulated themselves in the process, so it's mostly people from their school or their school committee.
Yep.
you know, and again, last fall, I had a conversation with the town managers, you know, about this and said, you know, if we end up moving forward with this, you know, please start thinking about, is there somebody from your community that would be a good representation that we could, you know, we could pull in and have them be part of the process. And again, I want to go back to, you know, the how can Burlington help? I want to make sure that all of our communities are informed and understand the process that we followed, and, you know, and try to push that information out as we do it, and not wait till the end and, you know, try to have a big blast of stuff that kind of overwhelms people.
No, this is great. I mean, I appreciate you coming. I mean, Stacey, appreciate you coming in and providing an update. I think it's a really good opportunity. Like you said, it's 50 years.
Yep.
It's a great resource for the town, and you know, hopefully as we work through the process, you know, we'll hopefully, you know, we have to scare you off. I'm just kidding, but hopefully he'll come back and, you know, we can do an update periodically as we
Sure.
get closer, because I think as we, you know, get more into it's going to come
Yep.
fast and furious. Hopefully, like every so often, we can come back and do a periodic update. But I want to appreciate you coming in and providing some more information. I know everybody in Burlington probably, as they watch this, will appreciate the update on this. So,
Well, thank you for pulling this together.
thank you.